my friends and I discovered a hidden wildlife sanctuary. The animals here are unusual. Part 2. By Redditor A.J. Crowley 29. It was impossible. It made no sense at all. And yet it was standing right in front of us. A living, breathing Deinonychus, an actual motherfucking dinosaur. Edmund actually fainted, and Johnny and Julia looked not far behind. What? Uttered Johnny. There's no way, that's impossible. It's gotta be an overgrown peacock or some shit. I have no idea how, replied Teddy. But there's no mistaking that body shape, or those claws. I could tell his shock was wearing off, quickly being replaced by nerdy excitement. I mean, that's the one defining trait of the Dromaeosauridae dash. Teddy, cut the bull, suddenly interrupted Julia. That's not a dinosaur, it's a big bird. Since when do dinosaurs have feathers? Haven't you watched any movies? They're just big lizards. Stop trying to freak us out and tell us what this actually is. She was fuming, looking almost ready to chew Teddy's head right off. I was honestly more scared of her in that moment than the creature cautiously eyeing us mere feet away. Teddy wasn't intimidated, which is funny in retrospect as he's probably the most cowardly of us all. That's because your childhood lied to you, he said matter-of-factly. Then without another word, he whipped out his phone and typed something faster than I could imagine possible. Within practically the blink of an eye, he was showing both of us an image. This is what a raptor actually looks like, not those scaly movie monsters from Jurassic Park. The image showed a large, feathered animal with a scaly muzzle. It was practically identical to the creature in front of us, except the colors were different. He scrolled down, showing more and more pictures. They all lined up, and they all had the name Deinonychus under them. Julia knew she was defeated, but she still couldn't believe it. I could hardly believe it myself, and I wouldn't call myself a massive skeptic, unlike Julia. But how? Why? It doesn't make sense. Tell us something we don't know, I said with a sarcastic tone. Apparently she took offense to that. She looked over at me angrily, and was about to say something else when a low chirp made us turn. Guess we had somehow forgotten about the dinosaur a coin toss away. The animal had begun approaching us, its head tilting almost like a dog's. It kept its curious yet cautious attitude as it took one delicate step towards us at a time. It approached Johnny first. We all held our breaths as it slowly walked up to him, sniffed at his shirt, and poked his hand with its snout. I had never seen a man look so ready to shit his pants as Johnny did for those few seconds of contact. He looked white as a ghost, as if all the blood had just vanished from the blood vessels in his face. But the dinosaur didn't attack, instead it lowered its gaze and began sneaking towards something else. It was heading for Ed, still fainted in the grass. Julia began looking around, for something to protect her brother. She reached down, grabbed a stick, and was about to raise it over her head and charge like a caveman attacking a saber-toothed tiger, but was stopped by Teddy. What the hell are you doing? She hissed through clenched teeth. Attacking it might just piss it off. Besides, Ed's actually in a perfect position. Animals generally won't attack something they think is dead, he yelled back at her. That was true, actually. I remember reading in a book that the best way to survive a grizzly bear attack was to play dead. But how did he know if that trick would work on a raptor? The animal was now standing over Ed's limp body. It lowered its snout to sniff at his shirt, then his hands just like it had done with Johnny, then it began sniffing Ed's face. That's when Ed woke up. And he screamed. The scream was so loud and guttural, I actually had to cover my ears for a brief second. I turned away, fully expecting the next sound to be Ed getting disemboweled. But that sound never came, and I quickly looked back over to see the creature had jumped off Ted, apparently frightened by the noise. It then did something weird. It fanned out its wing feathers and began shaking them while hissing, its mouth open to reveal a row of small yet very sharp-looking teeth, caked with fox blood. No way, a threat display? Teddy yelled with apparent happiness. Amazing. I knew this behavior was found in modern-day owls and other birds of prey, but He didn't finish his sentence, as the Deinonychus suddenly turned and ran away from us. It darted into the bush, paused a moment to grab the fox's body in its jaws, then moved like a cheetah right into the thicket of brush and brambles. It was gone, just like that. Julia helped Edmund up, and he seemed thankful to be alive after that encounter. It didn't get any of me, did it? Nope, said Julia with a slight giggle. I do believe you are fully intact, all limbs and digits accounted for. My mind was still racing from the pure and utter impossibility of it all, but I quickly realized what we needed to do. Come on, guys. Let's go home. Everyone turned to me, with either confused or annoyed looks. And what exactly are we going home for, exactly, said Teddy. We just made the scientific find of the century. We have to follow it, see if there are any more. And of course we gotta take pictures, or else who's gonna believe us? I'll tell y'all something, this is gonna make us all richer than Dash. Forget it, dude. I snapped at him. What does it matter? Obviously something shady is going on around here. Why do you think those signs are up there? I gestured to the trees. And what of those people who went missing after poking around the trespassing zone? What, you think they got eaten? That or they were taken away by the government, because they saw something they weren't supposed to see. Face it, Teddy, we're not meant for this. Whatever secrets are out here aren't for us to find. And trying to find it would probably get us all killed. Let's just go home, and swear to never speak of this day. They were silent for a minute after my speech, until Ed walked to my side. I agree with him, I mean, there's probably nothing but trouble out there. Something terrible could happen to us. Teddy looked like he wanted to say something, anything, but he knew his argument was finished. I guess that settles it then. Alright, let's go Dash. You can shove that quitter attitude right up your hairy bum, said Johnny suddenly. Did you not just see the most amazing shit of your life? Something that you'll remember on your deathbed? I know I did, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna let curiosity eat away at me till the bitter end. I don't know about any of you, but I've gotta know what's going on here, even if I get locked up again. What do you mean again Dash? I started before Julia interjected. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I agree with Johnny, her cheerful attitude had returned, and apparently the skeptic side no longer existed. This is what we were searching for, right? Something big, something scary, something nobody's ever seen. And who on earth besides Sam Neill and Chris Pratt can say they've seen a living, breathing raptor up close? We gotta solve this mystery. They gathered on one side of the field, while me and Ed stood on another. 3 on 2, we were outnumbered. I weighed my options, then finally realized what I had to do. With a heavy sigh, I admitted defeat. Alright. We'll do this. But we gotta make sure to stick together, and if anything, and I mean anything bad happens, we run away and never look back. Got it? Got it, the 3 newfound dino hunters shouted in sync. You're really doing this? I mean, what if there's more of them out there, said an exasperated Edmund. I'm sure there's something out there. Not too fond of seeing it, but I can't let them go by themselves. If I left them here and they never came back, I would blame myself for the rest of my life. Ed mumbled something I couldn't hear. What? Ed, speak up. I suppose that's true, I was saying. I mean, I can't bring myself to leave Julia out here. Now you get how I feel. I replied, then took a deep breath. Well, let's get going before the second thoughts kick in. Alright, so we can't follow the Deinonychus because the path it took is blocked by thorns, explained Teddy. However, we could go back to the pipe and see where that leads. So we trekked back down the hill to the area we had dug up the pipe. Teddy listened again to determine which way the water was flowing, then pointed us in that direction. It led up the hill, past the no trespassing signs. I knew this was the point of no return. We hiked through the wilderness, past trees and grasses and rolling hills, with no evidence we were in some kind of top-secret area. Eventually, a clearing became visible to us in the distance. As we got closer, we could hear the sounds of water below us. The pipe was running right toward that clearing. We picked up the pace, thinking we were onto something, and oh boy were we. We emerged into the clearing and were greeted by a large building, about 3 stories high. However, it wasn't actually a building, but instead a 35-foot tall cage? Julia finished my train of thought for me. The cage was shaped like a dome, and we could see the inside. It looked to be a habitat for some sort of animal, with trees and tall rock spires that looked artificial. We could see a river running through it, but the river had no apparent entry or exit point. It just kinda appeared into the cage. "Look, the pipe." Johnny suddenly pointed. Sure enough, the pipe was attached to the side of the cage, emptying water to fill up the stream. So it was an animal habitat. But there was still one unanswered question, and it was easily the most important. "What do you suppose lives in there?" I asked. "The raptor?" "Maybe," answered Teddy. "Doesn't really look like a habitat for a terrestrial animal though, more like a FL-. Hawkeye." An unfamiliar voice made us all jump practically out of our skin. I looked to our right, and at the edge of the cage I could see 2 people approaching. One was a man, and the other was a young woman. Considering the voice we heard was female, I assumed it was her who shouted. The man screamed next. "Hawkeye? Come on, girl." They were headed right for us. We had to act quick before they noticed us. That's when Johnny started running towards the cage. I was gonna object, but those 2 people were practically on top of us, and we had nowhere else to hide. We legged it for the side of the cage, then carefully helped one another squeeze through the bars. We ducked down low as the people finally reached the spot we were previously standing, and listened as they began talking. "Damn, this is taking forever," the man said while panting. "If we don't find that stupid bird soon, the boss is gonna have our heads." "Calm down, Elliot," said the woman. "I know Hawkeye like the back of my hand. She wouldn't have gone far." "Well, if you know that much, maybe you'd figure out that they can climb trees," said a clearly annoyed Elliot. "And use that to escape their pen." "Well, I'm sorry, alright? Maybe I don't know everything about Deinonychus, but that's why this place exists, isn't it?" "Deinonychus?" I whispered under my breath. "You don't suppose this Hawkeye is the one we saw?" asked Teddy. Before I could reply, Elliot spoke up again. "Alright, you go look that way. I'll head back up the trail," he gestured in the direction we had come from. "No matter what, we can't let that thing make it to town. If the world knew what we were doing here. "Jesus, stop overreacting," said the woman. "We've dealt with far worse incidents than this." "Why yeah, I guess that's true," stammered Elliot. "Alright, let's get moving, and quick." He ran back around the cage, and the woman began running back the way we came, yelling Hawkeye's name. We heard the sound of an engine of some sort being started from behind us, but a small building attached to the side of the cage blocked our view. We heard something driving off. I sat back and sighed out of relief and stress. That was way too damn close. And who were those 2 people? Workers? Government officials? The mystery of this place was only deepening. "Man, that was a close shave there, huh?" I joked with the group. Silence. Guys," I said, looking over. They were all looking up, their faces filled with awe. I heard Johnny utter "my God" under his breath. "What are y'all looking at?" I looked up. Wings. Big ones. Dozens of pairs of massive wings were swooping all around us in the cage. I had to do a double take before I could finally comprehend what I was seeing, and when I realized, I shouted it out. Pterosaurs. There were tons of them, diving down and swooping back up. There were big ones, with long beaks and massive, colorful crests adorning their heads, and smaller ones with shorter, sharper wings and toothy snouts in place of beaks. They were all covered in some sort of furry material, not exactly feathers but not exactly hair either. Of course, Tenny knew each one. Pteranodon. Rhamphorhynchus. That's a Dimorphodon, and a Pterodactylus ananoe, a Geostrnbrgia. He routed with glee as a truly giant flyer with the biggest and most vibrant crest in the whole flock passed by us. It must have had a 15-foot wingspan at the minimum. I found myself impressed that such a massive thing could even fly at all. They're beautiful. I looked over to see Ed actually had tears in his eyes while watching the magnificent display above us. A sudden whoosh of wind came from our left. I looked over to see one of the airborne reptiles had landed on a small ledge next to us. "Teddy, which one is that?" I asked excitedly. "Pteranodon longiceps. You can tell by the tall crest." He was right about that. A tall, horn-like structure jutted out from the top of its noggin pointed skyward. It was brilliantly collared with shades of pink lined with black stripes, contrasting the rest of its body which was white with a few black markings. With a black beak that had an orange spot on either side where the nostrils were. The eyes were small and beady, yet shone a brilliant ice blue. Julia stood closest to the pterosaur, and that seemingly gave her an idea. She began carefully navigating across the rocks we stood on to get closer to it. "Sis, wait," exclaimed Ed. "I wouldn't do that, if I were you," added Teddy. "We have no idea how these animals view people. It could get hostile." "Yeah, Julia, that seems like a bad idea," I said. She looked over at us and smiled. I think she knew it would help calm us down. "Relax, boys, I didn't win a gold medal on track for nothing," she said before continuing on. I wanted to ask her what track had to do with befriending a prehistoric reptile, but it was too late. She now stood right beside the creature. It looked at her yet made no sound, aside from the light clacking of its beak as it breathed. She got as close as she could, then extended a hand towards its face. I held my breath, fully expecting her little stunt to go terribly wrong. But to my surprise, the pterosaur didn't freak out or attack, instead it actually nuzzled her hand with its face like it was enjoying the attention. She laughed and called it cute, and soon that got us all laughing. It was a nice, happy scene for a few seconds. You could take a photo of it and it would look like something out of Jurassic World. You know, before the whole park went to shit. That was when disaster struck. As Julia turned to head back towards us, she slipped on a loose rock and came dangerously close to falling. She yelped in surprise and stuck out her hands to find anything to grab onto. Unfortunately, the only thing within arm's reach was the pteranodon's beak. She grabbed it and nearly pulled the animal down with her, however it quickly regained its footing and began struggling against her grasp. Ed and Johnny ran over and took her by her other hand, pulling her out of harm's way. She let go of the beak, but clearly the animal was spooked and agitated. It spread its huge wings and took to the sky. It began to shriek loudly, a sound almost as ear-piercingly unpleasant as a fork being dragged over a plate. We covered our ears, but it quickly got much worse. Another pterosaur shrieked, then another. Soon the entire flock was screaming. They all took to the skies and flew in a flurry around us. It was like a tornado come to life. They began dive-bombing us, pecking at our arms and legs and kicking us with their talons. We got knocked down many times, and Ed had a nasty cut on his arm from the bite of a pterodactylus. "We gotta get out of here, now!" Johnny shouted. We fought our way through the enraged flock to the other end of the cage. We had to squeeze through the bars one at a time, all the while getting pecked, kicked and clawed. I had just made it through and Teddy was last to get out. We turned to run for it when he suddenly screamed. I turned around, and my stomach sank as I saw the massive Geosternbergia had a grip on his leg and wasn't letting go. It was frantically flapping, trying to lift him off the ground. Teddy had one arm wrapped around a cage bar, hanging on for dear life. "Help me!" he screamed desperately to us. We ran back and grabbed him, fighting to hold him down. The flying beast had impressive strength, though, and we had to pull with all our might to keep it from carrying him off. It was biting into his leg with its beak, and I suddenly remembered Julia's mishap that started this mess. It gave me an idea. I reached through the bars and grabbed the beak, then pulled with all my might. I pulled and I pulled and I pulled. It felt like I was towing a 16-wheeler by hand. Eventually, though, the giant pterosaur had enough and let go of Teddy's leg. I released the beak and was immediately forced backwards. The great flyer shook its head in disorientation, then turned and flapped its way back up to the circling flock. After a minute, the screeching and frantic flapping slowed as the pterosaurs regained their calm. We yanked Teddy through the bars with such strength I was worried we dislocated his shoulders at first. However, it turned out he was moaning because of the bleeding wound on his leg instead. Ed thankfully had brought a first aid kit, as he did on all our hikes as a just in case. We patched up Teddy's leg and Ed's arm, then waited until he was strong enough to stand. Flipping, told you not to do that, he said to Julia while punching her arm. Oh come on, the poor things just got scared. It was kinda your fault though, said Ed, not afraid to call out his own sister. Well, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Nobody's saying that, Julia. It was an accident, we all know that, said Johnny, apparently playing the good cop now, if only for Julia. Thanks, Johnny. At least somebody here takes my side. Julia was giving the stink eye to Ed as she said this, apparently feeling the biggest betrayal was her own flesh and blood. Ah well Ed, it was nothing, don't worry about it. I thought I saw a hint of a blush on Johnny's cheeks there. His stutter got a laugh out of Julia, which helped raise our spirits after the harrowing experience. Suddenly, Ed's voice floated to us from a distance. Yo guys, you gotta come see this. We all turned and saw he was waving us over while standing in front of that smaller building I mentioned earlier. We looked at each other, then decided to go check it out. We rounded the corner, and he pointed to a large, open garage door. The inside of the building was a little dark, but we could make out some things inside: benches, desks, a large pinboard on the wall, and a couple buckets. We went in to take a closer look, and immediately picked up on a foul stench, like dead fish. It didn't take long to find what was causing it. That's disgusting, Julia suddenly said after looking in one of the buckets. We looked inside too, and were greeted with a bucket full of dead anchovies. The smell was so bad I felt hot bile rising in my throat, and I turned away to vomit. But it did that almost puke, but you can't quite force it out, so you gotta swallow it again, thing that everyone hates. Johnny gagged loudly before announcing. Why do they got that nasty SH stuff? Isn't it obvious? Teddy answered. It's food for the pterosaurs. He was looking through a door that apparently led to the interior of the aviary, with several empty buckets lying at the side. Huh, so these guys like seafood? I questioned. Of course, he said. Every species in there is a fish eater. In the wild they would be found on shorelines and rocky beach cliffs, like modern seabirds. So are pterosaurs basically prehistoric seagulls? Asked Ed, then added while looking at his arm, they certainly have the same temper. Jackpot! Johnny's voice suddenly boomed. We looked over and found him dancing around a large tarp. Actually, something large was covered by a tarp. I immediately recognized the outline. He lifted the tarp to reveal a car, specifically a 1993 model Jeep. I only knew this because I went through a car phase when I turned 16, and obsessively researched every brand and almost every model. What are you planning on doing with that? Julia asked. Well, when we're solving the mystery of the de-extinct dinosaurs, do you really want to have to walk everywhere? He said. The next big clue could be a mile away for all we know. These woods are practically endless. Oh no, I am not getting arrested for Grand Theft Auto, swiftly retorted Julia. You do realize we've already likely broken several laws just by being here, right? Teddy chimed in. Besides, my leg isn't fully well yet. It'll be a pain in the ass to go the long way. Realizing she was losing this argument, Julia sighed. If we get caught, I'm leaving the both of you behind. That had Johnny and Teddy looking legit worried for a second, but they shrugged it off quick with some fake laughter. Johnny got to work hotwiring the car, then we all piled in and flew out of the garage. We drove in a straight line for a while, through what looked like an old dirt road, before we came to a turn. There were two signs before us. Large carnivores straight. Medium herbivores left. We looked at each other. The choice was so obvious, no words were said, a few nods were sufficient. The mystery would hopefully be solved soon enough. We turned left.